My uncle's death was the best thing that ever happened to me. The call came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, jarring me awake in my studio apartment where the heat had been shut off for 6 days. Uncle Robert was dead. Heart attack, my cousin Janet said, her voice artificially somber through the phone. Massive one. He didn't suffer. I should have felt something, grief, relief, maybe even guilt for the flash of hope that shot through my chest. Instead, I sat on the edge of my mattress on the floor, staring at the stack of overdue bills on my makeshift desk, and felt absolutely nothing. Sarah? Are you there? Yeah, I managed. When's the funeral? Saturday at 2. St. Mary's on 5th Street. Will you? I mean, can you make it? Could I make it? Like I had anywhere else to be. Like I had anything else to do with my pathetic excuse for a life that Robert had so carefully orchestrated. I'll be there. I hung up and immediately called the restaurant where I'd been working doubles for 3 months straight. I need Saturday off. Sarah, you can't just. My uncle died. The words tasted strange. Final. 4 days later, I stood in the back of St. Mary's wearing my only black dress, a cheap thing I'd bought for job interviews that never led anywhere. The church was packed. Robert had been one of those men who collected people like trophies, business partners, charity board members, politicians. They filled the pews in their expensive suits, talking in hushed tones about what a pillar of the community he'd been. I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Maybe both. Robert Kavanaugh, pillar of the community. The same man who'd promised to pay my tuition at the Art Institute, then systematically destroyed my credit when I couldn't keep up with his impossible demands. The man who'd hired me at his consulting firm for family rates, $12 an hour with no benefits, while billing clients $200 for every hour of my work. Who'd convinced my parents I was ungrateful when I tried to explain how he trapped me in a cycle of debt and dependency that made escape impossible. Such a generous man, someone whispered behind me. Always helping that niece of his pursue her little art hobby. My hands clenched into fists. 6 years. 6 years of working 60-hour weeks while watching my dreams shrivel up like fruit left too long in the sun. 6 years of living paycheck to paycheck while Robert drove his BMW and vacationed in the Hamptons, always reminding me how lucky I was that family was there to help. The service dragged on for 90 minutes. Person after person stood up to talk about Robert's kindness, his business acumen, his commitment to family values. I sat there calculating how much money I owed, $47,000 in student loans, $3,200 in credit card debt, $800 in unpaid utilities, first month's rent and deposit if I ever wanted to move somewhere with actual heat. When it was over, people filtered out slowly, stopping to shake hands and exchange business cards even at a funeral. I was almost to the door when Janet grabbed my arm. The lawyer wants to see you, she said. Her perfectly made-up face looked pinched. Annoyed. Something about the will. The will? Apparently Uncle Robert left you something. She said it like it physically hurt her. We're meeting at Morrison and Associates tomorrow at 10. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Robert had left me something. Probably his art books, or maybe that easel he'd bought me for Christmas 3 years ago, the one that came with a lecture about fiscal responsibility and following through on commitments. Still, as I walked home in the October cold, something flickered in my chest. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was just hunger. Morrison and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower downtown, the kind of building where the elevator buttons felt heavier than my monthly grocery budget. I arrived 20 minutes early because I'd never owned a car and the bus schedule didn't care about my anxiety. The waiting room smelled like leather and old money. Janet was already there, sitting ramrod straight in a chair that probably cost more than my rent. Next to her sat my other cousin, Michael, Robert's nephew from his sister's side, wearing a suit that screamed investment banker. They both looked at me like I'd tracked mud across their Persian rug. Sarah. Janet's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. You look tired. I was tired. I'd worked until 2 a.m. the night before, covering for another waitress who'd called in sick. My black dress was wrinkled, my shoes had a hole I'd covered with electrical tape, and I was pretty sure I smelled faintly of fryer grease despite the shower I'd managed with lukewarm water. Traffic, I lied. Michael checked his Rolex, an obvious gesture meant to remind everyone in the room that his time was valuable. How long is this going to take? I have a conference call at 11:30. Before I could answer, the secretary called us back. The lawyer, Morrison himself, was a thin man in his 60s who looked like he'd never smiled without billing someone for it. He gestured for us to sit around a conference table that could have fit my entire apartment. Thank you all for coming, Morrison began, opening a thick folder. Robert's will is unconventional. He made several revisions in the months before his death. Janet leaned forward. Unconventional how? Morrison cleared his throat and began reading. The first part was exactly what I'd expected, charitable donations, small bequests to various organizations. Janet got Robert's car and his golf club membership. Michael received his coin collection and wine cellar. Then Morrison paused, looked directly at me, and kept reading. To my niece, Sarah Elizabeth Chen, I leave the remainder of my estate, including all properties, investments, and liquid assets, totaling approximately $2.3 million. The words hit the room like a grenade. Janet's face went white, then red. That's impossible. I'm afraid it's quite specific, Morrison said calmly. Mr. Kavanaugh was very clear about his intentions. She didn't even visit him. Michael's voice cracked with indignation. We were the ones who. There's more, Morrison interrupted. He pulled out a sealed envelope. Mr. Kavanaugh left specific instructions that this letter be given to Sarah immediately following the reading of the will. My hands were shaking as I took the envelope. My name was written across it in Robert's familiar handwriting, the same script that had signed all those loan documents, all those contracts that had kept me trapped. This is insane, Janet hissed. We'll contest it. She manipulated him, obviously. A dying old man. Mr. Kavanaugh underwent a psychological evaluation just 3 weeks ago, Morrison said quietly. At his own request. He was determined to be of completely sound mind. He anticipated concerns about his decision. The room was spinning. $2.3 million. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having, more than I could spend in 10 lifetimes of my current existence. I stood up abruptly, clutching the letter. I need some air. Sarah, wait, Janet started to follow me, but Morrison's voice stopped her cold. Mrs. Patterson, I believe there are some additional stipulations we need to discuss regarding the timeline of asset transfer. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I walked straight out of that glass tower and kept walking until I found a bench in a small park 3 blocks away. Then, with hands that wouldn't stop trembling, I opened my uncle's final letter. Sarah. Asterisk, if you're reading this, then I'm dead and you're probably confused as hell. Good. Confusion means you're paying attention, asterisk. Asterisk, I know what you think of me. I know what I put you through these past 6 years, and I know you hate me for it. You should. What I did was calculated, methodical, and cruel. I turned you into my personal indentured servant while convincing everyone, including your parents, that I was being generous, asterisk. But here's what you don't know, I was dying anyway. I had to stop reading. The words blurred as my vision tunneled. A jogger passed by, earbuds in, completely oblivious to the fact that my entire understanding of reality was crumbling on a park bench. Asterisk, the doctors told me 18 months ago. Congestive heart failure. Could be 2 years, could be 6 months, could be tomorrow. I chose not to tell the family because I couldn't stomach the fake sympathy and the circling vultures, asterisk. Asterisk, you want to know why I kept you trapped? Because I was testing you. Every impossible deadline, every humiliating task, every time I watched you swallow your pride and keep working, I was watching to see if you'd break. If you become another entitled family member with your hand out, or if you'd stay decent despite everything I threw at you, asterisk. Asterisk, you never broke, Sarah. Not once. You stayed kind to my secretary when I made her spy on you. You helped train your replacement when I told you I was cutting your hours. You sent me a birthday card last year even though I'd just garnished your wages for that missing client file, the one Michael actually lost, by the way, asterisk. My phone buzzed. A text from Janet, we need to talk. This isn't over. I kept reading. Asterisk, so here's the truth, every dollar I stole from you, I invested. Every hour I underpaid you, I tracked. The money is yours, Sarah, it was always supposed to be yours. But I needed to make sure you could handle it without turning into the monster I became, asterisk. The real test starts now. Asterisk, because the money comes with a choice. You can take it and disappear. Build your art studio, pay off your debts, live a life you've earned. God knows you deserve it. Or you can dig deeper, asterisk. Asterisk, check the safety deposit box at First National, box 247. The key is taped under the false bottom of the jewelry box in my study, the one with the broken latch that Janet always complained about. Inside that box, you'll find documentation of everything. Not just what I did to you, but what the whole family has been doing for years, asterisk. Asterisk, Michael's insider trading. Janet's embezzlement from the Children's Hospital charity. Your cousin David's real estate fraud that displaced 60 families last year. Even your parents' tax evasion scheme that I helped them set up, asterisk. Asterisk, we're not good people, Sarah. We're successful people who've convinced ourselves that's the same thing, asterisk. Another text, this time from Michael, don't let this money change you. Uncle Robert would want the family to stick together. I almost laughed. Or maybe I actually did laugh, because an old man feeding pigeons nearby gave me a concerned look. Asterisk, if you choose to use what's in that box, you'll destroy them. All of them. But you'll also destroy yourself in the process. Revenge is a full-time job, and I should know, I spent 40 years perfecting it, asterisk. Asterisk, choose carefully, Sarah. You're the only decent person our family ever produced. Don't let us ruin that too, asterisk. Asterisk, the money is yours regardless. But your soul, that's up to you, asterisk. Uncle Robert. Asterisk P.S. Fired Janet from the gallery board. She's been skimming from the Artist Commission Fund for 3 years, asterisk. I folded the letter carefully, my hands no longer shaking. In the distance, I could see the glass tower where Janet and Michael were probably still arguing with the lawyer, still trying to figure out how to contest a will that had been designed to be bulletproof. $2.3 million. And the power to destroy everyone who'd watched Robert abuse me and said nothing. My phone rang. Janet again. This time, I answered. Sarah, we need to meet. Right now. Janet's voice had lost all pretense of politeness. This whole thing is ridiculous. Uncle Robert was clearly not thinking straight. Actually, Janet, I think he was thinking more clearly than he had in years. Don't be naive. You have no idea how to handle that kind of money. You'll blow through it in 6 months buying art supplies and organic groceries. Her laugh was brittle. Look, we can work something out. A trust fund, maybe. Michael and I could help you manage. Like you managed the Children's Hospital Fund? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. What did you just say? I said no thank you. To all of it. I hung up and immediately turned off my phone. My hands were steady now, my mind crystallizing into something sharp and focused. The safety deposit box key. I needed to see what Robert had really left me. The walk to Robert's house took 45 minutes. I'd made this trip hundreds of times over the past 6 years, usually carrying work files or bringing him dinner when he claimed to be too busy to eat. The Tudor-style mansion sat on 2 acres in Riverside Heights, the kind of neighborhood where the lawns looked like golf courses and the mailboxes cost more than most people's cars. I still had my key. Robert had never asked for it back, probably because he'd enjoyed the power of knowing I could access his space but never truly belonged there. The house felt different now, hollow somehow, like a theater after the last performance. Janet's Mercedes was already in the driveway. I found her in Robert's study, rifling through his desk drawers with the focused intensity of someone looking for ammunition. She looked up when I walked in, her perfectly styled hair slightly disheveled. Sarah. Good. We really do need to talk. About what? The will seems pretty clear. About reality. She straightened, smoothing down her designer blazer. You think you can just waltz in here and claim everything? Do you have any idea what kind of responsibilities come with Robert's estate? The business partnerships, the investment portfolios, the property management? I walked past her to the antique jewelry box sitting on Robert's bookshelf, the one with a broken brass latch that had annoyed Janet for years. My fingers found the false bottom immediately. The small silver key was exactly where Robert said it would be, secured with electrical tape. What are you doing? Janet's voice pitched higher. Following instructions. I pocketed the key. Robert left me very specific directions. He left you money, not a treasure hunt. God, you're just like your mother, always so dramatic about everything. That stopped me cold. What did you say about my mother? Janet's smile was calculating. Oh, Sarah. There's so much you don't know about your precious family dynamics. Why do you think your parents never intervened when Robert was helping you? They were getting their cut too. My stomach dropped. You're lying. Am I? Ask them about the property transfer in 2019. The one where Robert helped them hide assets from the IRS. They made almost $200,000 on that deal while you were working doubles at that pathetic restaurant. The jewelry box slipped from my hands, clattering onto the hardwood floor. The broken latch finally gave way completely, scattering Robert's cufflinks and tie clips across the Persian rug. Your parents knew exactly what Robert was doing to you, Janet continued, circling me like a shark who'd smelled blood. They needed you to stay trapped so Robert would keep helping them. One big, happy, profitable family. My phone buzzed against my leg. I turned it back on without thinking. A text from my mother, asterisk heard about Uncle Robert's will. So proud of you, honey. Can we talk soon? Dad and I have some exciting investment opportunities, asterisk. The room was spinning again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was rage, pure and crystalline, spreading through my chest like wildfire. Now you're starting to understand, Janet said softly. We're all complicit, Sarah. Every single one of us. The only difference is that some of us are smart enough to profit from it. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw Robert's smile staring back at me. So what's it going to be, she asked. Family loyalty, or self-destructive idealism? I picked up the scattered cufflinks, found the key, and headed for the door. Neither, I said. I'm going to choose option 3. The safety deposit box sat in vault number 12 at First National, surrounded by the quiet hum of fluorescent lights and the metallic smell of old money. The bank manager, a nervous woman named Mrs. Chen who kept apologizing for the cramped space, left me alone with a metal box that weighed more than it should have. Inside were 3 manila folders, each labeled in Robert's meticulous handwriting, Michael, Janet, and the rest. I opened Michael's file first. Stock purchase records dating back 4 years, all made 24 to 48 hours before major company announcements. Xeroxed emails between Michael and his fraternity brother who worked at the SEC bank statements showing deposits that perfectly correlated with his trades. Robert had been thorough. There were even photos of Michael and the SEC contact having lunch, timestamps clearly visible. The insider trading was so blatant it was almost insulting. Michael had made $340,000 in illegal profits over 3 years, and Robert had documented every transaction. Janet's folder made me physically nauseous. Hospital invoices for chemotherapy treatments that were never administered. Receipts for medical equipment that was never purchased. A detailed spreadsheet showing how she'd systematically stolen $127,000 from the children's cancer wing over 18 months, money that was supposed to buy actual medicine for actual dying kids. There were photographs of her at charity galas, accepting awards for her humanitarian work while wearing a $3,000 dress bought with stolen funds. But it was the third folder, the rest, that made my hands start shaking again. My parents' tax returns, the real ones and the fake ones they'd filed. Property deeds showing how they'd transferred ownership of their house to a shell company Robert had created, then claimed financial hardship to avoid paying $89,000 in back taxes. Email chains between my mother and Robert discussing how to keep me motivated and manageable while they finalized their fraud scheme. Robert, she's getting suspicious about the tuition payments. Asterisk mom, just increase her hours. Keep her too tired to ask questions, asterisk. Asterisk Robert, the restaurant job was brilliant. Exhaustion is better than any contract, asterisk. Dated 3 months ago. There were more files underneath. My cousin David's real estate scam that had displaced 60 families, exactly as Robert had mentioned. Forged documents, bribed inspectors, families evicted with 24-hour notice so David could flip their rent-controlled apartments into luxury condos. Profit margin, $1.2 million. Uncle Tom's medical insurance fraud, billing Medicare for procedures on patients who'd been dead for months. Aunt Patricia's money laundering operation through her art gallery. Even my teenage cousin Sarah, yes, we shared a name, another family tradition of narcissistic recycling, had been running a fake charity scam through her high school, collecting donations for homeless shelters that didn't exist. Every single person who'd sat in that church and called Robert generous, who'd shaken my hand and told me how lucky I was to have such caring family, was a documented criminal. And they'd all watched him destroy me for 6 years without saying a word. My phone had been buzzing constantly. 17 missed calls from Janet, 12 from Michael, 8 from my parents. Text messages were pouring in. Janet, don't do anything stupid. Asterisk Michael, we can split the estate fairly. Call me, asterisk. Asterisk mom, honey, family comes first. Remember that, asterisk. Asterisk dad, your mother's right. Don't let money change who you are, asterisk. The bank vault felt smaller with each message, like the walls were closing in. But my breathing was steady now, my mind sharp with perfect clarity. I photographed every document with my phone, uploaded them to a cloud storage account, and emailed copies to myself at 3 different addresses. Then I put everything back in the box, locked it, and walked out into the afternoon sunshine. Janet was waiting by my bus stop, leaning against her Mercedes like a predator who'd finally cornered her prey. Find anything interesting? She asked. I smiled at her, the first genuine smile I'd felt in years. Actually, yes. I found my new career. My new career? Janet's laugh was sharp, but I caught the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Sarah, you're a waitress with a useless art degree. What career? Justice, I said simply, pulling out my phone. Starting with a call to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Her face went pale beneath her foundation. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? I scrolled through my contacts, stopping at the number I just Googled. Special Agent Martinez specializes in charity fraud. I bet she'd be very interested in those children's hospital records. Janet grabbed my wrist, her manicured nails digging into my skin. Listen to me very carefully. You have no idea what you're dealing with. This family has connections you can't imagine. Judges, prosecutors, city council members. Like Judge Harrison? I pulled up one of the photos on my phone. The one taking bribes from David's real estate shell company? Or maybe Prosecutor Williams, who's been covering up Michael's insider trading in exchange for stock tips. Janet's grip loosened. How do you, Robert kept files on them too. Robert kept files on everyone. I tucked the phone away. 40 years worth. He was very thorough. A city bus rumbled toward us, and I stepped toward the curb. Janet moved to block me, desperation creeping into her voice. Sarah, please. Think about what you're doing. These people, my people, we made one mistake. One stupid mistake each. Do you want to destroy entire lives over money? One mistake? I laughed, and it sounded foreign coming from my throat, bitter and sharp. Janet, you stole chemotherapy drugs from children with cancer. For 18 months. That's not a mistake, that's a business model. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Explain it to me. The bus was 2 blocks away now. Explain how you accidentally embezzled $127,000 from dying kids while buying designer handbags. The hospital has insurance. Those kids still got treated. I redirected some administrative funds. Administrative funds. I pulled out my phone again, scrolled to a specific photo. Is that what you call this invoice? Morphine sulfate, pediatric oncology ward, $3,200. Except the morphine never arrived, did it? Because you pocketed the money and told the nurses they'd have to make do with over-the-counter pain relievers. Janet's composure finally cracked. You don't understand the pressure I was under. The divorce lawyers, the custody battle, I needed that money to keep my kids. So you took it from other people's kids who were dying. The bus pulled up with a hydraulic wheeze. As I climbed the steps, Janet called after me. This isn't over, Sarah. You can't just. The doors closed, cutting off her voice. Through the window, I watched her fumble for her phone, probably calling Michael, or my parents, or whatever lawyer they kept on retainer for situations like this. Let them call. Let them panic and scramble and try to coordinate their stories. Because while they were playing defense, I was about to go on the offensive. I pulled out Robert's letter and read it again, focusing on one specific line. Revenge is a full-time job, and I should know. I spent 40 years perfecting it. 40 years. That's how long Robert had been collecting evidence, building cases, documenting every crime and misdemeanor committed by our sprawling, corrupt family tree. He turned revenge into an art form, a legacy more valuable than the $2.3 million. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, Sarah, your father and I are driving up tonight. We need to discuss the situation as a family, The situation. Not my inheritance, not Robert's death, not their systematic betrayal of their own daughter. The situation. I typed back, tomorrow, 10 a.m., Morrison and Associates. Bring your tax attorney, The response came immediately, honey, there's no need for lawyers. This is family business, Exactly, I replied. See you at 10. As the bus carried me back toward my studio apartment, my cold, cramped, soon-to-be former prison, I opened a new document on my phone and began typing. Day 1, assets confirmed, evidence secured, targets identified. Tomorrow we begin phase 2, The meeting at Morrison and Associates the next morning felt like a poorly rehearsed theater production where everyone had forgotten their lines. My parents arrived 15 minutes late, my mother clutching her purse like a shield while my father's usual commanding presence had shrunk to nervous fidgeting. They'd brought Gerald Hoffman, their tax attorney, a sweaty man in an expensive suit who kept checking his phone like he'd rather be anywhere else. Sarah, sweetheart, Mom began, her voice artificially bright. You look tired. Are you eating enough? 6 years of systematic exploitation, and she was worried about my meal plan. I'm fine, I said, taking a seat directly across from them. Mr. Morrison, thank you for arranging this meeting. Morrison nodded professionally. Of course. Though I should mention that several other family members have requested similar meetings today. Your cousin Michael insisted on a 2 p.m. slot, and Mrs. Patterson has been calling since 7 a.m. Dad leaned forward, using his boardroom voice. Sarah, we need to discuss the responsibilities that come with Robert's estate. Managing that kind of wealth requires experience. Like the experience you gained hiding assets from the IRS? The words dropped into the conference room like a stone into still water. Hoffman actually flinched. My mother's face went through 3 distinct color changes before settling on pale green. I don't know what you're talking about, Dad said, but his voice cracked on the last word. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the photos from the safety deposit box. Property transfer dated March 15, 2019. You sold the house to Kavanaugh Holdings LLC for $50,000, approximately $340,000 below market value. Then you immediately leased it back for $200 a month while claiming financial hardship on your tax returns. Hoffman was frantically scribbling notes. Sarah, these are serious allegations. They're not allegations. I swiped to the next photo. Here's the email chain between Mom and Uncle Robert from last October. Keep her too tired to ask questions, ring any bells? Mom's composure finally shattered. You have to understand, we were desperate. Your father's business was failing, we had medical bills. So you decided to sacrifice your daughter. It wasn't supposed to be permanent, she protested. Robert promised it would only be for a year or 2, just until we got back on our feet. And you were getting valuable work experience. At $12 an hour with no benefits while he billed clients $200 for my work. We didn't know about that part, Dad said quietly. I stared at him. You didn't know, or you didn't want to know? The silence stretched until Morrison cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should discuss the current situation rather than past arrangements. Oh, we're definitely discussing the current situation, I said. Starting with the fact that the IRS penalties on your tax fraud total approximately $127,000, plus interest. And the statute of limitations doesn't run out for another 3 years. Hoffman's pen stopped moving. How do you know the specific penalty amount? Because Robert calculated it. He was very thorough. I scrolled to another document. He also researched the federal sentencing guidelines for tax evasion. 3 to 5 years, depending on the amount involved. My mother started crying, not the elegant tears of a grieving sister, but the ugly, desperate sobs of someone watching their world collapse. Sarah, please. We're your parents. We love you. You love me? The laugh that came out of my mouth sounded like Robert's. Cold and sharp and utterly without warmth. You sold me to your brother-in-law like livestock and took a kickback on the deal. That's not, we never thought of it like that. Then how did you think of it? Dad tried to recover some authority. Sarah, you're being emotional. Yes, we made some financial mistakes, but family forgives family. That's what Robert would have wanted. Actually, Robert left very specific instructions about what he wanted. I pulled out his letter, unfolded it slowly. He wanted me to understand exactly what this family is. And he wanted me to choose whether to be part of it or destroy it. And what did you choose? Hoffman asked quietly. I looked at my parents, really looked at them. My mother, who'd taught me to paint watercolors and bandaged my scraped knees, now sitting across from me like a stranger. My father, who'd read me bedtime stories and helped with my math homework, staring at the conference table because he couldn't meet my eyes. I chose honesty, I said finally. Something this family seems allergic to. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, *, this is Special Agent Martinez, FBI Financial Crimes Division. I received your email this morning. Can we meet today to discuss the materials you provided, *. I showed the text to everyone at the table. Hoffman actually whimpered. Sarah, Mom whispered. What have you done? What Uncle Robert trained me to do, I replied, standing up. I learned from the best. As I walked toward the door, Dad called after me. Sarah, wait. We can fix this. Whatever it takes, we can make this right. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. You had 6 years to make it right. You chose not to. We're still your parents. No, I said, turning back to face them one last time. You're my first targets. The FBI field office smelled like burnt coffee and institutional disinfection. Special Agent Martinez turned out to be a compact woman in her 40s with shrewd eyes and the kind of handshake that suggested she could break bones if necessary. She led me to a conference room that made Morrison's office look warm and inviting. Ms. Chen, I have to say, in 15 years of financial crimes investigation, I've never received a more comprehensive evidence package. She spread out printed copies of Robert's files across the table like a dealer laying out cards. Your uncle was remarkably thorough. He had 40 years of practice. Martinez picked up Janet's hospital fraud documentation. This alone represents 18 felony counts. The insider trading case against your cousin Michael is probably the most clear-cut I've ever seen. She paused, studying my face. The question is, why now? Your uncle died 6 days ago. You could have buried all of this with him. I thought about Robert's letter, about his final test. Because burying it means more people get hurt. Janet's still on the hospital board. Michael's still trading on insider information. My cousin David just broke ground on 3 new development projects that will displace another 100 families. And your parents? Are meeting with their lawyer right now, probably trying to figure out how to transfer more assets offshore. I pulled out my phone, showed her the text I'd received 20 minutes earlier from my father, * wire transfer to Cayman account complete. Thanks for the heads up, *. Martinez raised an eyebrow. They're moving money while under investigation? They don't know they're under investigation yet. I told them I'd sent you evidence, but they probably think it'll take weeks to process. I smiled grimly. They're not very smart criminals. Unlike your uncle. Robert was brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. I gestured at the files. He didn't just collect evidence, he orchestrated scenarios that would generate more evidence. That Cayman account my father just used? Robert set it up 2 years ago and made sure every transaction would be automatically flagged by FinCEN. Martinez made a note. Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Your uncle understood federal monitoring systems. He understood everything. Banking regulations, statute of limitations, RICO predicates. He turned our family into a textbook case study in organized criminal enterprise. Which brings me to my next question. Martinez leaned back, her expression unreadable. What's your role in all this? 6 years of working for your uncle's company, handling client files, processing financial documents. A prosecutor might argue you were complicit. My stomach dropped. In all my righteous fury, I hadn't considered that I might be painting myself as a co-conspirator. I was being exploited. I know. Your employment records show systematic wage theft, and we verified that you were never informed about the fraudulent aspects of client transactions. She paused. But legally speaking, ignorance isn't always a complete defense. The room felt smaller suddenly. What are you saying? I'm saying that cooperation agreements work both ways. You provide testimony and evidence, we recommend immunity for any inadvertent involvement. Martinez pulled out a thick legal document. This is a formal cooperation agreement. Sign it, and you're protected. Refuse, and you might find yourself charged alongside your family. I stared at the document, my hands trembling. How do I know you won't use this against me later? Because frankly, Ms. Chen, you're worth more to us as a witness than as a defendant. Your uncle's files are comprehensive, but they need someone who can explain the context, identify the players, walk us through the operational details. Martinez's voice softened slightly. Besides, you're the only person in this family who seems to have any moral compass left. My phone rang. Janet's name appeared on the screen. Answer it, Martinez said. Speaker phone. I accepted the call, hands still shaking. Hello, Janet. Sarah, thank God. Where are you? Michael and I have been trying to reach you all morning. Janet's voice was strained, artificial calm layered over obvious panic. We need to meet. All of us. Tonight. What's the rush? The rush is that you're about to destroy innocent people over a misunderstanding. What you found in Robert's files, it's not what you think. He was paranoid toward the end. He saw conspiracies everywhere. Martinez was taking notes rapidly, gesturing for me to keep Janet talking. Paranoid about what, specifically? About the family. About money. He convinced himself we were all plotting against him. Janet's voice pitched higher. Those documents you found, half of them are fabricated. Robert was sick, Sarah. Mentally sick. The bank records are fabricated? The email chains? The photographs? Taken out of context. Manipulated. You can't trust anything he compiled in those final months. Martinez slid a note across the table, keep her talking about specifics. So the $127,000 you took from the children's hospital, that's fabricated too? The silence stretched for nearly 10 seconds. When Janet spoke again, her voice was different. Colder. Who have you been talking to, Sarah? Does it matter? It matters because certain conversations might be considered threatening to family welfare. And family has ways of protecting itself. Martinez's eyes sharpened. She wrote quickly, that sounds like intimidation. Are you threatening me, Janet? I'm reminding you that actions have consequences. For everyone involved. The line went dead. Martinez looked up from her notes. Congratulations, Ms. Chen. Your cousin just committed federal obstruction of justice. She pushed the cooperation agreement toward me. Still want to think about it? I picked up the pen, my hand finally steady. Where do I sign? The cooperation agreement was 17 pages of legal jargon that essentially boiled down to, tell us everything, and we won't prosecute you for crimes you didn't know you were committing. I signed it at 3:47 p.m., exactly 1 week after Janet's phone call about Robert's death had changed everything. Martinez walked me through the next steps while I tried to process the magnitude of what I'd just committed to. Grand jury testimony. Depositions. Months, possibly years, of court proceedings where I'd have to sit across from my parents and watch them realize their daughter had destroyed their lives. We'll start with financial document authentication, Martinez explained, sliding a calendar across the table. Tuesday the 15th, 9 a.m. You'll walk our forensic accountants through your uncle's filing system, explain the context behind each transaction. What about protection? The question came out smaller than I'd intended. Janet's threat wasn't subtle. We're monitoring all their communications now. The obstruction charge gives us probable cause for surveillance warrants. Martinez's smile was sharp. Your family is about to discover that the FBI takes witness intimidation very seriously. My phone had been buzzing constantly throughout the meeting. 17 missed calls from various family members, 43 text messages ranging from pleading to furious. I scrolled through them while Martinez gathered her files. Asterisk Michael, Sarah, we need to talk. Tonight. 8 p.m. at Robert's house. Come alone, asterisk. Asterisk Dad, your mother is having chest pains. You need to call off whatever you've started, asterisk. Asterisk Mom, please honey. Think about your future. This kind of betrayal follows you forever, asterisk. Asterisk Janet, you have until midnight to reconsider. After that, certain information about your own activities might become public, asterisk. That last one made my blood run cold. I showed it to Martinez, who photographed it immediately. What information could she have? Martinez asked. I don't know. I never did anything illegal. Doesn't matter if it's true. The threat of public humiliation can be just as effective as actual evidence. Martinez stood, straightening her blazer. Which is why we're accelerating the timeline. Meaning? Meaning we execute search warrants tomorrow morning. Simultaneously. Janet's house, Michael's apartment, your parents' home, David's real estate office, the whole network gets hit at 6 a.m. sharp. My stomach lurched. Tomorrow morning, federal agents would be breaking down my childhood home's front door while my parents ate breakfast. My mother would probably be in her faded pink robe, the one she'd worn every Saturday morning for 20 years. She'd cry, and my father would try to protect her, and they'd both realize that their daughter had orchestrated their destruction. Ms. Chen? Martinez was watching me carefully. Second thoughts? I thought about Robert's letter, about his final test. About choosing between revenge and redemption, between justice and mercy. Then I thought about the children's hospital invoices. The morphine that never arrived. The families David had evicted with 24 hours notice. No second thoughts, I said. But I want to be there when you arrest Janet. Martinez raised an eyebrow. That's unusual. So is stealing chemotherapy drugs from dying children. The next morning arrived gray and cold, the kind of October dawn that promised winter was coming whether you were ready or not. I sat in an unmarked FBI van across from Janet's pristine colonial house, watching through tinted windows as federal agents surrounded the property at exactly 5:57 a.m. Janet answered the door in silk pajamas and a white terry cloth robe, her hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. Even being arrested, she looked like she was posing for a magazine cover about elegant living. This is harassment, she announced loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. I'm calling my attorney. Ma'am, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice, Agent Williams replied, producing handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Through the van's window, I watched my cousin, the woman who'd taught me to apply lipstick and taken me shopping for my first job interview, get read her Miranda rights on her front lawn while her neighbors whispered behind their curtains. My phone rang. Martinez had given me a secure device for family communications, and Michael's name appeared on the screen. Sarah, what the fuck have you done? His usual polished demeanor had cracked completely. There are federal agents in my apartment right now. They're taking my computers, my phones, my trading records. Good morning to you too, Michael. This isn't a joke. They're talking about RICO charges. Do you understand what that means? Through the van window, I watched Janet being placed in the back of an FBI sedan, her silk pajamas wrinkled now, her perfect composure finally broken. It means Uncle Robert was right about you, I said quietly. All of you. Sarah, please. We can fix this. Whatever they promised you, we can match it. Double it. The van started moving, following the sedan carrying Janet toward federal booking. In 2 hours, she'd be fingerprinted and photographed and assigned a prisoner number. The same woman who'd sat in church last week accepting condolences for our generous uncle would be wearing an orange jumpsuit by lunch. Michael? Yes. Yes, I'm here. What do you want? Money? Property? I can transfer assets right now. I want you to think about something. 6 years ago, when Robert first started exploiting me, you watched it happen. You all did. And you said nothing because it was profitable. That's not, we didn't know. You knew exactly what was happening. And you decided I was an acceptable sacrifice for your comfort. The sedan turned toward downtown, toward the federal courthouse where Janet would face a magistrate judge and learn whether she'd be granted bail. Now you're the sacrifice, I said, and ended the call. The arraignment hearing was scheduled for 2 p.m., but by noon the courthouse steps looked like a media circus. Someone had leaked the story, prominent family dynasty faces federal racketeering charges, and news vans lined the street like predators waiting for blood. I sat in Martinez's office watching the coverage on a small television while she briefed me on what to expect. Janet had been denied bail after prosecutors argued she was a flight risk with access to offshore accounts. Michael's hearing was scheduled for Thursday. My parents would surrender themselves tomorrow morning with their attorney present. The media attention changes things, Martinez said, muting the TV as a reporter interviewed Janet's neighbors. Your family's going to get desperate faster than we anticipated. Meaning? Meaning they'll try to flip the narrative. Make you the villain. She pulled out a manila folder I hadn't seen before. We intercepted this an hour ago. Inside was a printed email from David's real estate office to someone named Patricia Voss at the Herald Tribune. The subject line read, Story pitch, local woman's revenge plot destroys grieving family. My hands went cold as I read David's version of events. According to him, I was a troubled young woman with a history of mental health issues who had manipulated a dying elderly man into changing his will. The federal charges were the result of my vindictive fabrication of evidence against family members who had only tried to help. This is completely fabricated, I said, though my voice sounded uncertain even to me. Of course it is. But fabricated stories can still destroy lives. Martinez retrieved the folder. The good news is that Patricia Voss is a legitimate journalist. She'll fact-check before running anything. The bad news is that your cousin David is smarter than we gave him credit for. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, check your email. You have 24 hours. A friend, I pulled up my personal email account on Martinez's computer, my stomach already nodding with dread. The message had no sender name, just a generic address, but the subject line made my blood freeze, Sarah's secret life. The email contained a dozen photographs, clearly taken with a telephoto lens over several months. Me leaving my apartment at various times. Me walking to work. Me meeting with Martinez yesterday. But the last 3 photos made me understand exactly what Janet had meant about certain information. They showed me entering Robert's house on various dates, using my key, sometimes carrying files or documents. The timestamps were clear, and someone had helpfully added captions. February 15th, 2:30 a.m., Sarah Chen accessing deceased uncle's property. March 8th, 11:45 p.m., Chen removing documents from residence. October 3rd, 6:15 a.m., Chen entering property hours before meeting with FBI. Without context, the photos painted a perfect picture of someone stealing from a dead relative's estate. Son of a bitch, Martinez muttered, reading over my shoulder. They've been surveilling you for months. But I had permission to be there. Robert gave me the key years ago. Try explaining that to a jury after they've seen photos of you sneaking around at 2 a.m. Martinez was already reaching for her phone. This is sophisticated harassment. Professional surveillance equipment, coordinated media strategy. A new email appeared in my inbox, this one with my mother's address. The message was short, *Honey, we need to meet. Tonight. 8 p.m. at Riverside Park, by the duck pond. Come alone, and we can end this before it gets worse for everyone, I stared at the screen, recognizing the same tone she'd used when I was 8 and had broken her favorite vase, disappointment mixed with the promise of forgiveness if I just confessed and apologized. Absolutely not, Martinez said when I showed her the email. That's textbook witness intimidation. But what if she's serious about ending this? What if they're willing to plead guilty, accept responsibility? Sarah. Martinez's voice cut through my wishful thinking like a blade. Your mother sent that email 12 minutes after someone threatened to destroy your reputation with surveillance photos. This isn't reconciliation, it's coordination. My phone rang. Dad's number. Answer it, Martinez said, already recording. Keep him talking. Hi, Dad. Sarah, sweetheart. His voice was strained but controlled, the same tone he'd used during business calls when I was growing up. Your mother and I have been thinking. About everything that's happened. About what Robert really wanted. What did he want? He wanted the family to be honest with each other. And we haven't been honest with you. A pause, the sound of traffic in the background. But we can be now. Tonight. Just the 3 of us, like when you were little. I closed my eyes, remembering Saturday mornings at the duck pond, feeding stale bread to mallards while my parents pointed out different species. Before college debt and career failures and Uncle Robert's systematic destruction of my life. The thing is, Dad, I don't think you know how to be honest anymore. That's not fair, Sarah. Isn't it? You've had 6 years to be honest. Instead, you helped Robert exploit me while you profited from tax fraud. My voice was getting stronger, clearer. So what's changed? Besides the FBI searching your house this morning? The silence stretched long enough that I thought he'd hung up. When he spoke again, his business voice had cracked completely. What's changed is that we're going to prison, Sarah. Your mother and I are going to spend the next 5 years in federal custody because our daughter decided to destroy us. His breathing was ragged. And for what? Money you never needed Robert's permission to earn. Respect you could have commanded without burning down your entire family. I didn't burn anything down. I just stopped putting out the fires you kept starting. Meet us tonight, he said quietly. Give us a chance to make this right. I looked at Martinez, who was shaking her head emphatically while making slashing motions across her throat. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up. The silence in the office stretched until Martinez finally spoke. You're not actually considering this. They're still my parents. They're federal defendants who just invited you to an isolated location after threatening your reputation with illegally obtained surveillance photos. Martinez pulled out her phone. I'm calling for protective detail. Wait. I stared out the window at the news vans, at the reporters who were already spinning this story in directions I couldn't control. What if I wear a wire? Martinez paused mid-dial. What? They want to meet, to explain themselves. Let them. But record every word. I turned to face her fully. If they're really willing to take responsibility, we'll have it on tape. If they're planning something worse, then we'll have evidence of conspiracy charges. Martinez set down her phone, her expression shifting from protective to predatory. That's actually not a terrible idea. So we do it? We do it. But with backup positioned within 50 yards, and extraction protocols if anything goes wrong. She was already making notes. Your parents just made their final mistake, Sarah. I nodded, but my hands were trembling again. In 6 hours, I'd be sitting by the duck pond where my father had taught me to skip stones, wearing a wire to record my parents' last desperate attempt to save themselves. Robert would have been proud. The wire felt heavier than it should have against my ribs, a small rectangular reminder that I was about to record my parents confessing to federal crimes. Martinez had chosen a park bench with clear sightlines, Agent Williams positioned behind the maintenance shed, Agent Torres in an unmarked van on Maple Street, Martinez herself pretending to jog the perimeter trail. Remember, she'd said while the tech fitted the device, let them talk. Don't lead them toward admissions, just let them explain themselves. Now I sat by the duck pond at 7:55 p.m., watching the same mallards I'd fed as a child, trying not to think about how this was probably the last normal moment I'd ever have with my parents. They arrived together, walking slowly like people approaching a funeral. Mom wore her navy coat, the one she saved for important occasions, and Dad had on his gray suit, no tie. Even planning their daughter's destruction, they dressed appropriately. Sarah. Mom's voice was soft, careful. Thank you for coming. You look thin, Dad added, settling beside me on the bench. Are you eating enough? 6 years of exploitation, and they still defaulted to parental concern. It would have been touching if it weren't so calculated. I'm eating fine. I kept my voice steady, remembering Martinez's instructions. You said you wanted to be honest. Mom sat on my other side, flanking me like they used to during my elementary school concerts. We've been thinking about what Robert really wanted. About why he left you everything. He wanted you to understand the family business, Dad said quietly. The real business. Not the consulting firm or the property investments, the business of survival. A duck approached our bench hopefully, probably remembering decades of visitors with breadcrumbs. I wished I'd brought some, wished this could be a normal family moment instead of a wire-recorded confession. What do you mean, survival? Your grandfather lost everything in 1987, Mom said. The stock market crash, the real estate collapse, our entire family fortune disappeared overnight. Robert was the only one who understood that playing by the rules was a luxury we couldn't afford anymore. Dad leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Every family has to make choices, Sarah. Protect each other or protect principles. We chose family. You chose crime. We chose not to lose everything again. His voice hardened slightly. The tax strategies, the property transfers, that wasn't greed. That was making sure you'd inherit something worth having instead of watching it all disappear to government bureaucrats. I felt the wires weight against my chest, imagining Martinez in her van listening to my parents rationalize decades of fraud as family loyalty. What about the money Robert stole from me? Was that family protection too? Mom's hand found mine, her fingers cold despite her gloves. That was the hardest part to watch. But Robert convinced us it was temporary, that he was teaching you resilience while building your inheritance. Teaching me resilience by keeping me in poverty? By keeping you hungry, Dad said quietly. Robert believed comfort made people weak. Look at Janet, look at Michael, they inherited wealth young and became entitled, careless. You inherited struggle and became strong. A jogger passed by, Martinez on her second loop, right on schedule. In the van, agents were recording every word while my parents explained how systematic abuse had been an investment in my character development. So the FBI raids this morning, I said carefully. That was unexpected? Mom's grip tightened on my hand. That was heartbreaking. Because it means Robert's final lesson failed. What lesson? That family protects family, Dad said. No matter what. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a house fire. Family protects family. I could feel the wire recording every syllable while my parents sat on either side of me, probably believing they were saving their daughter from her own destructive choices. Robert's lesson failed? I repeated, keeping my voice neutral. What exactly was I supposed to learn? Dad shifted on the bench, his suit jacket rustling in the October wind. That power without loyalty is meaningless. Robert gave you $2.3 million and the evidence to destroy everyone who ever hurt you. But he expected you to choose mercy over vengeance. Like you chose mercy when you watched him exploit me for 6 years? We chose patience, Mom said firmly. Robert promised that every dollar he underpaid you was being invested for your future. We verified the accounts, Sarah. The money was always there, always growing, always meant for you. A maintenance truck pulled into the parking lot, too early for the evening shift, probably Agent Torres repositioning for better surveillance. The ducks scattered at the sound, leaving ripples across the dark water. But here's what Robert didn't anticipate, Dad continued, his voice taking on the edge I remembered from his business calls. He didn't think you'd be vindictive enough to destroy innocent people. Innocent people? The laugh escaped before I could stop it. Dad, you defrauded the government of $89,000. Janet stole chemotherapy drugs from dying children. Michael's insider trading. Michael made some questionable investment decisions, Mom interrupted. That's hardly organized crime. The FBI seems to disagree. The FBI, Dad said quietly, is being manipulated by a young woman who's confused grief and anger with justice. He turned to face me fully. Sarah, I need you to understand something. The evidence Robert collected, it's not what you think it is. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. What do you mean? Robert was paranoid in his final months. Obsessive. He started investigating family members, looking for patterns that didn't exist, building cases around normal business practices. Dad's voice grew more confident. Those hospital invoices you think Janet falsified? Administrative restructuring approved by the board. Michael's stock trades? Based on public information and legitimate research. Our property transfer? Standard estate planning. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. You're saying Robert fabricated evidence? We're saying Robert lost perspective, Mom said gently. He turned ordinary family business into a conspiracy theory. And now you're perpetuating his delusions by feeding lies to federal investigators. The wire felt like it was burning against my ribs. Were my parents genuinely convinced of their innocence, or were they trying to manipulate me into recanting my testimony? In the growing darkness, it was impossible to read their faces clearly. Sarah, Dad said, his voice dropping to a whisper, there's something else you need to know. About the surveillance photos. My blood chilled. What about them? We didn't take them. Mom leaned closer. Someone else has been watching you. Someone who knew about Robert's plans, about the inheritance, about your cooperation with the FBI. Who? We think it's someone from Robert's business network. Someone who stands to lose a lot if his files become public. Dad glanced around nervously. The kind of person who might arrange accidents for witnesses who know too much. My phone buzzed. A text from Martinez, asterisk everything okay? Your heart rate spiked, asterisk. The wire included biometric monitoring. Somewhere in the van, agents were watching my vital signs while my parents either told me the truth about a conspiracy I didn't understand, or executed the most sophisticated manipulation attempt I'd ever witnessed. What are you asking me to do? I said quietly. Come home, Mom whispered. Tonight. Let us protect you while we figure this out together. In the distance, I could see Martinez jogging closer, her hand positioned near the radio on her belt. I had 30 seconds to decide whether my parents were terrified criminals or terrified victims. The duck pond reflected the streetlights like scattered coins as I stared at my parents, trying to parse truth from manipulation. The wire against my ribs felt like it was broadcasting my heartbeat to half the FBI. You want me to come home, I said slowly, after federal agents raided your house this morning. The house where you grew up, Mom said, her voice breaking slightly. Where your old room still has those watercolor paintings you made in high school. Where we kept every report card, every art project, every photo of our daughter who used to trust us. Dad's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face went pale. Sarah, we need to leave. Now. What? Someone just sent photos of this meeting to Channel 7 News. They'll be here in 10 minutes with cameras. He stood abruptly, scanning the park. The surveillance isn't just about evidence, it's about controlling the narrative. My mind raced. Martinez was 50 yards away, pretending to stretch by the oak tree. The van was positioned on Maple Street. But if news crews showed up, my cooperation with the FBI would be broadcast across the city before I could get to safety. The person watching you, Mom said urgently, they want you exposed as a federal informant. Do you understand what that means for your safety? A new text appeared on my phone, this time from an unknown number, asterisk pretty family reunion. Smile for the cameras arriving in 8 minutes, asterisk. Oh God, I whispered, showing them the message. Dad's business instincts kicked in. We have 3 options. Run together now and look guilty on camera. Stay and get ambushed by reporters asking why the FBI's star witness is secretly meeting with federal defendants. Or what? Or you come with us right now, and we disappear until we can figure out who's orchestrating this. Martinez had stopped pretending to jog. She was walking directly toward us, speaking into her radio. In the distance, I could see headlights turning into the park, too many vehicles, moving too fast. Sarah, Mom pleaded, 6 years ago we made a choice to trust Robert with your future. We were wrong. But right now, you have to choose whether to trust us with your life. My phone rang. Martinez's number. Don't answer it, Dad said sharply. The moment you take FBI direction, you become their asset permanently. Is that what you want? To spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder for whoever's pulling these strings? The headlights were definitely news vans. I could see the satellite equipment on the roofs. Martinez was 40 yards away and closing fast, her hand now openly on her service weapon. Sarah Elizabeth Chin. Mom's voice cracked like a whip, using my full name the way she had when I was 8 years old and about to run into traffic. You have 30 seconds to decide if you're a daughter or their witness. A spotlight suddenly blazed across the duck pond, followed by another. Channel 7's news van screeched into the parking lot, followed by 2 more vehicles I didn't recognize. Car doors slammed in rapid succession. Martinez broke into a run, speaking rapidly into her radio. All units, converge on the pond. We have civilians in potential danger. Sarah. A reporter's voice boomed across the park. Sarah Chen. Is it true you've been secretly recording family members? The ducks exploded into flight, their wings beating frantically as they escaped the chaos. I stood frozen between my parents and my FBI handler, between loyalty and justice, between everything I thought I knew and everything I was afraid to discover. Dad grabbed my left arm. Now or never, sweetheart. Martinez was 20 yards away, her weapon drawn but pointed at the ground. Sarah, step away from them immediately. The camera lights were blinding now, turning the park into a stage where every choice would be recorded and broadcast. I looked at my parents one last time, then made my decision. I yanked my arms free from both my father's grip and Martinez's reaching hand, stepping backward into the shallow edge of the duck pond. The cold water soaked through my shoes as camera lights blazed across my face. Nobody move. I shouted, my voice carrying across the water. Not the FBI, not my parents, not the goddamn news crews. The reporters hesitated, probably not expecting their star witness to wade into a pond during what should have been a straightforward ambush. Martinez lowered her weapon but kept it ready, her eyes scanning for threats I couldn't see. Sarah, you're in danger, she called out. We have intelligence about. About what? About surveillance photos that magically appeared right after you arrested my family? About anonymous tips to news stations that knew exactly where to find us? I pulled out my phone, water dripping from my hands. About this? I held up the screen, showing a new message that had arrived 30 seconds ago. Asterisk the Chin family reunion is now live on Channel 7. Wave hello, Sarah asterisk. Martinez's face went white. That's impossible. We're jamming all cellular signals in a 3-block radius. Apparently not all of them. I looked at my parents, who were standing frozen by the bench like deer in headlights. Mom, Dad, you said someone else was orchestrating this. Someone from Robert's business network. Dad nodded slowly. Someone who needs Robert's files to disappear permanently. A new vehicle pulled into the parking lot, not a news van, but a black sedan with tinted windows. No government plates, no official markings. It parked away from the media circus, and no one got out. Martinez, I called, never taking my eyes off the sedan. Who else knew about tonight's meeting? Only my immediate team. Williams, Torres, and my supervisor. Agent Martinez. A new voice cut through the chaos, calm and authoritative. A woman in an expensive coat emerged from behind the news vans, flanked by 2 men in dark suits. I'm Deputy Director Catherine Walsh, Internal Affairs. We need to speak. Martinez's grip tightened on her weapon. Ma'am, I wasn't notified of IA involvement in this operation. Because this operation has been compromised from the beginning. Walsh gestured, and suddenly there were agents everywhere, real ones this time, with proper identification and coordinated movements. Agent Martinez, you're under arrest for evidence tampering and conspiracy. The park exploded into controlled chaos as IA agents moved to secure the scene. The news cameras kept rolling, but now they were being pushed back by federal marshals who'd appeared from nowhere. Sarah, Walsh called out, you need to get out of that water. Now. I waded back to shore, my mind reeling. Martinez under arrest? Evidence tampering? What the hell is happening? What's happening, my father said quietly, is that Robert's final lesson wasn't about choosing mercy over vengeance. It was about learning who to trust. Walsh approached slowly, her hands visible and empty. Ms. Chen, your uncle's safety deposit box contained more than evidence about your family's crimes. It contained documentation of a federal money laundering operation that's been using legitimate financial investigations to cover asset seizures. Agent Martinez has been feeding information to organized crime figures for 18 months, one of Walsh's agents added. Your cooperation agreement was designed to eliminate witnesses, not protect them. My legs gave out, and I sat heavily on the muddy shore. Everything I thought I knew, about the investigation, about justice, about who the real criminals were, was collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. The surveillance photos, I whispered. The media leaks. All orchestrated to isolate you from legitimate protection while making you dependent on compromised federal agents. Walsh knelt beside me. Ms. Chen, you've been targeted for assassination. Tonight was supposed to be your final meeting with anyone. In the distance, Martinez was being handcuffed while reading from what looked like a prepared statement. The black sedan was gone, vanished as quietly as it had arrived. So what now? I asked, watching my parents being escorted toward legitimate federal vehicles by agents I couldn't identify. Now, Walsh said grimly, we find out how deep Robert's rabbit hole really goes. The truth about Robert's final gift revealed itself 3 months later, in a secured conference room at the Justice Department where the walls were lined with boxes of evidence that spanned 40 years of financial crime. Deputy Director Walsh spread out the last documents from Robert's safety deposit box, the ones that had been sealed under court order until the investigation into Agent Martinez's corruption concluded. Your uncle wasn't just collecting evidence on your family, she said, sliding a thick folder across the table. He was documenting the entire network. Inside were organizational charts that looked like spider webs. At the center sat Martinez's supervisor, Deputy Director James Crawford, who'd been using FBI financial investigations to identify high-value targets for organized crime partnerships. The money laundering operation had generated $847 million in stolen assets over 8 years, with Crawford taking a 15% cut on every seizure. Robert discovered the scheme in 2019 when Crawford tried to recruit him as an asset, Walsh explained. That's when he started his real investigation, not into your family's petty fraud, but into systematic corruption at the highest levels of federal law enforcement. My parents sat across from me, looking smaller somehow in their government-issued clothing. They'd spent 12 weeks in federal custody while IA untangled the web of compromised agents and fabricated evidence. The tax evasion charges were real. They'd pled guilty to misdemeanor violations and paid $47,000 in penalties, but the conspiracy allegations had been manufactured to justify their elimination. So when I contacted the FBI about the family crimes, I said slowly, Robert knew I'd be walking into a trap. He counted on it. Walsh pulled out Robert's final letter, not the one he'd left me, but one he'd sealed with instructions to open only after Crawford's arrest. He needed someone inside the system to trigger the investigation from below while he documented everything from above. The letter was vintage Robert, calculating and ruthless. Asterisk Sarah will do what's right because she can't help herself. Crawford will move to silence her because he can't help himself. The collision between Sarah's integrity and Crawford's corruption will expose the entire network, saving both my niece and the federal justice system. Asterisk. Asterisk I told her revenge was a full-time job. I didn't tell her that justice is a calling. Asterisk. Dad leaned forward. Robert sacrificed 6 years of your life to build a case that would destroy a billion-dollar criminal conspiracy? He sacrificed 6 years of my life to save it, I corrected, finally understanding. Everything he put me through, the debt, the exploitation, the systematic abuse, it wasn't punishment. It was preparation. The money was mine, all $2.3 million, plus another $400,000 in restitution from the Justice Department's settlement with Crawford's network. Janet would serve 18 months for the hospital fraud. Michael got 3 years for insider trading. David faced 5 years for the real estate schemes. But here's what the news stories missed, what made Uncle Robert's death truly the best thing that ever happened to me. Crawford's network had been targeting federal witnesses for elimination for almost a decade. 47 people had died in accidents or suicides after cooperating with FBI financial investigations. Without Robert's elaborate setup, without my cooperation, without Martinez's betrayal, without the media circus that forced internal affairs to intervene, I would have been number 48. Instead, I was sitting in a government conference room, signing papers that officially closed the largest federal corruption case in Justice Department history. So what now? Walsh asked, gathering the files. You've got enough money to disappear, start fresh anywhere in the world. I thought about Robert's letter, about choosing between revenge and redemption. About the difference between justice and vengeance. Now I open an art studio, I said. And I establish a fund for federal witnesses who need protection from corrupt agents. My parents smiled, really smiled, for the first time in years. Uncle Robert had taught me that survival sometimes requires becoming a monster. But his final lesson was that redemption requires choosing to become human again. The money was just the beginning. Justice was the gift that would last forever.